Hey guys, tonight we step into straw sandals, smell the ash of distant battles, and feel the weight of a wooden sword slung across our back. You're not just anyone tonight, you're Miyamoto Musashi. The man, the myth, the duel magnate, Japan's wandering swordsman, philosopher warrior, ink brush hermit. You're born into a land torn apart. Feudal Japan is all blood-soaked soil, burning castles and daimyos too proud to share land but happy to share violence. Your cradle? Probably splintered pine. Your lullaby? The clang of steel and the heavy silence of dead warriors. You're most likely born in the year 1584, though historians still argue whether it was 1581 or if your real name was even Shinmen Takezo at birth. It's a little foggy. Record keeping wasn't exactly a priority in war. Your family is minor samurai stock, Busho class. Not rich, not famous, but very skilled at making people regret starting fights. Your dad is a swordsman and possibly a bit of a hothead. His discipline? Brutal. His love? Conditional. His parenting philosophy? If you can dodge a blade, you can dodge a responsibility. You're awkward, large for your age, and prone to rashes and wild mood swings. Basically, puberty's worst nightmare with a wooden sword. And that sword, by the way? You're swinging it before you can write your name. There's no warm schoolroom waiting for you, only a dusty training yard, maybe a few chickens clucking around, and a father shouting corrections over the sound of steel. At age 7, you're already practicing with adult weapons. At 10, you're watching duels from behind barrels. At 11, you break your cousin's nose with a bamboo stick. The world is chaos outside your village. Warlords like Tokugawa and Toyotomi play chess with entire provinces. Castles fall, alliances crumble, and everyone's hungry for one thing: dominance. You, however, are just hungry. There's never enough rice in the house, and no one tells jokes here unless it ends in a smack. By 13, the village whispers your name with caution. You're tall, moody, and too silent for a kid. You're the one who sharpens sticks just to watch them whistle through air. You spar alone. You stare at insects for hours. You build traps for birds not to catch them, but just to study how they dodge. And then it happens. Your first real duel. A traveling samurai named Arima Kihei stops in your village. He's from the Shinto Ryu school, flashy, arrogant, and looking for challengers. You're 13, barefoot, sweaty, and possibly having the worst acne flare of your life. But you hear the call and answer. Historians still debate whether your uncle tried to stop you or egged you on. Either way, you appear in front of Kihei like a shadow cast by a very confident tree. No armor, no real training. Just a carved wooden sword that smells like pine and rebellion. Kihei laughs. Of course he laughs. You're a gangly farm teen who smells like wet straw and doesn't even bow properly. He assumes you'll quit after the first swing. But you don't. You charge. Not with grace. Not with elegance. With rage, confusion, adrenaline, and maybe a little vengeance toward every adult who called you strange. You hit him. Once. Twice. And then the third strike, his skull cracks. It's over. The duel ends. Not in honor, not in applause. Just silence. The air smells like sweat, wood, and blood. And you? You're panting, chest heaving, eyes wide. You killed a man at 13, and there's no parade, no victory music. Just the realization that you've stepped off the ledge. Your life will never be normal again. You don't go to jail. That's the thing. Killing someone in a duel? Legal, if not polite. It's a culture where combat can be sport, test, revenge, or even flirtation, depending on the tone. The elders don't hug you, but they also don't stop you from walking away. And walk away you do. Because something inside you shifts after that first duel. You don't want to be known as the boy who killed a swordsman. You want to be the name that ends arguments. The standard, the final boss. So one day, with no fanfare and no map, you leave. Just like that. You're 14. You pack a blade. A stick. maybe a rice ball or two. You don't say goodbye to your father, you don't kiss the ground. You just disappear like smoke after a fire. The road is harsh, sleep is rare, rice is a luxury. You live in abandoned shrines, under bridges, sometimes even in trees. Your body becomes wiry, your eyes sharpen, and your silence deepens. You spar with ghosts in your dreams and squirrels in the trees. Every village you enter, someone wants to test you. Every town, a dojo whispers your name, and you let them come. One by one. The duel at 13 is only the first. There will be 60 more. Maybe more than that, depending on which historian you trust. You win all of them. And here's the fringe fact no one tells you. Between all the violence, you start sketching. Yep, you doodle. Not just idle drawings, real careful ink work. Horses, mountains, ghosts. It's like your body was built for blades, but your mind, it starts craving quiet lines on parchment. You don't understand it yet. But something inside you, something big, ancient, maybe even sacred, is waking up, and it's hungry. The road you walk is long, crooked, and unpaved. Dust clings to your legs like a second skin, and your sandals are already starting to split at the seams. You're not worried. Your feet will toughen up. Everything will. You're 14 going on myth, and you haven't stopped moving since that first duel. Town to town, dojo to dojo. You're like a bad rumor with excellent footwork. You sleep wherever you can. Under temple eaves, on hay bales. Once curled in the hull of an abandoned fishing boat that smelled like seaweed and desperation. Then comes the second big name in your life. Tadashima Akiyama. Another samurai. Another grown man. Another challenger who thinks you're just a kid with an ego problem. You're 15 now, maybe 16. Your facial hair is still a rumor, but your sword is real enough. You don't wait for the drama, you challenge him outright. The duel happens fast. One cut, one scream, one silence. And then you walk away again, while villagers pretend not to stare and quietly add another line to your legend. At this point, you're not just fighting, you're collecting style data. See, back then, martial schools weren't just kickboxing versus karate like today's dojos. They were clans, philosophies, life paths. There was the Yagyu Shinkage-ryu, elegant and strategic. The Kashima Shinto-ryu, traditional and sharp as glass, and dozens more, each with its own rituals, footwork, and preferred ways to maim someone honorably. You study them all, not from textbooks, but by breaking their students' ribs. And then you hear the name that makes your blood itch. Yoshioka. The Yoshioka school in Kyoto isn't just big, it's legendary. Like they train bodyguards for the shogun big. Their dojo is more palace than school, and their pride is a brittle, glassy thing just waiting to crack. You walk straight into their territory like you're shopping for sushi, not blood. Some say you were invited. Others claim you picked a fight to show off. Historians still argue whether it was a calculated move or just another Musashi impulse. That twitchy instinct you get when someone says you can't. But here's what we know. Yoshioka Seijuro, head of the school, agrees to duel you. He's trained, decorated, and respected. You are none of those things. But you are dangerous. The duel is public, the crowd enormous, and your wooden sword, yes, still wooden, looks pitiful next to Seijuro's gleaming katana. But the moment the match starts, you move like wind down a mountain. Fluid. Heavy. Unstoppable. You break his arm with one blow, then you vanish. Why? Maybe to avoid retaliation. Maybe because you hate applause. Or maybe, and this is the spicy theory, you wanted the Yoshioka clan to come after you because they do. A rematch is set with Seijuro's brother, Denshichiro. You show up. He dies. Quickly. Brutally. You're 18 and two high-ranking warriors from one of Kyoto's most respected schools are gone. Both from your hand. This isn't a duel anymore. It's war. The Yoshioka clan, now desperate, plans a trap. They invite you to a third duel, but this time they don't send a swordsman. They send an army. Some say over 70 men wait, in ambush at the pine grove near Ichijoji Temple. Others say it was closer to 100, including archers and spearmen. Either way, the odds are math you shouldn't survive. You show up early, before dawn, before they're ready, with a bakken in your hand and the audacity of someone who eats logic for breakfast. You slip through their formation like shadow and storm. You don't fight fair. You don't wait for honor. You attack from the mist and leave chaos behind. You crack skulls, shatter knees, and melt into the bamboo when they blink. By sunrise, the Yoshiokas are done. Not just defeated, extinct as a school. You don't just win the fight. You end a legacy, and you walk away. Again. Your eyes bloodshot. Your robe torn. Your hands bruised and splintered. But your name? Oh, your name roars now. Even the streets of Kyoto whisper it. Mothers warn their sons not to be cocky, or Musashi will come knocking. Courtesans giggle and wonder if you're handsome under all that sweat. Students sketch imaginary duels against you in the dirt with sticks. Some monks claim you're cursed. Others think you're blessed. You sleep alone that night in an abandoned tea house. It smells like damp straw and jasmine. There's a cat that won't stop watching you from the rafters. You give it a nod. It doesn't blink. You still dream of rivers, still draw monsters in the dirt with your finger, still whisper sword names to yourself like prayers. And somewhere in your bones you feel the next step calling. You don't just want to win fights. You want to invent a new kind of fighting. You want a style that reflects how you breathe, how you walk, how your brain rewires itself mid-duel. You want to become a school of one, but not yet. First, you need to wander more. See castles, smell incense, feel snow, break hearts and maybe a few more ribs. And while you're at it, teach a few uppity noble kids why holding a sword doesn't mean knowing how to use it. You pack up your things, still light enough to carry on your back, and melt into the road once more. The cat doesn't follow, but the rumors do. The road never ends. Not for you. Every dawn cracks open with the same rhythm. Creaking sandals, chilled morning mist, and the promise of either rice or violence. Sometimes both, if you're lucky. You're around 20 now. Still young, but there's a weariness creeping into your stride. Not weakness, just density. Like stone that's been shaped by storms. You're a ronin now, masterless. Borderline mythical. Not tied to any lord or clan, which in this era of war and honor codes makes you more dangerous than a signed army. People don't know whether to bow to you or run. You prefer it that way. Your name is your passport. Villagers welcome you in hushed awe. Dojo masters offer you tea, then flinch when you reach for your sword. And always, always, there's some bright-eyed student, eager to impress their sensei by challenging you to a friendly match. It never ends well for them. You start roaming deeper, into provinces few dare to visit. You pass fields soaked with battle remnants, half-burned temples, roads dotted with shattered armor and stories whispered by trees. The air smells like pine needles, horse sweat, and every so often, something older, sadder. One day, you're approached by a man who doesn't speak. He just bows, unfolds a silk scroll, and hands it to you. It's a challenge, a formal duel. You don't even need to read the name, you already know it's coming. Ueda Rie. Another skilled samurai, backed by prestige and lots of expensive stitching on his kimono. You meet him at a quiet temple court. There's moss between the stones, and the wind won't shut up. You win. Quick, efficient, no drama. His students try to protest. You just give them that look, the one that makes people forget their own names. That victory earns you something unexpected. A letter of invitation from a daimyo, Lord Hosokawa, ruler of a prosperous fief in central Japan. He's heard of your skill, of course, everyone has. But what interests him isn't just your dueling record. It's your mind, your discipline, your refusal to bend. He wants you to come to his court. not as a warrior, as a guest. And that's a trap. Because you know what happens at courts. They don't duel with blades, they duel with manners, with poems, with sideways insults dressed in silk. You'd rather fight 5 men in an alley than attend a tea ceremony where no one blinks for 2 hours. But you go anyway, because part of you wants to understand, wants to see how power moves when it's not covered in blood. The castle is beautiful. Moats like mirrors. Gardens you could fall into and never return. Servants that walk like shadows. And rooms filled with scrolls, incense, and conversations that float just above the ground. You don't fit in. You walk too loud. Your robe is wrong. You stare too directly. But the daimyo respects you. He even asks you questions about swordplay, tactics, strategy. You give short answers, which only makes him more curious. And in the evenings, you wander the halls like a ghost, sketching on rice paper, watching court musicians rehearse songs about peace in a country that's anything but. Eventually, you leave. No farewell banquet. Just a silent nod from the Lord and a wrapped gift. Brushes, ink, and blank scrolls. You return to the road, feeling heavier and lighter at the same time. That's when you start writing. Not essays, not diaries. Tactics, observations, fragments of philosophy. You jot down how opponents move when they lie, how the wind shifts just before a strike, how fear has a scent. You don't know it yet, but these notes will become your first sketches of a style, the thing you've been chasing without realizing. Niten Ichi Ryu. 2 heavens, 1 school. A way of fighting with both swords at once. The katana and the short wakizashi, wielded together like a single breath. Not just flashy, not just brutal, efficient, balanced. Both hands doing what they're meant to do, no wasted motion. You begin practicing in secret, at dusk, at dawn, under waterfalls, on hilltops, in rain so hard you can't see your own hands. Every swing sharpens you, not just in muscle, but in presence. You start moving like a wave that decides who gets wet. And yet, even now, you're not done learning. You spend time at temples. Not praying, just listening. You trade techniques with monks. You read Chinese military texts by candlelight, squinting at the brush strokes and occasionally muttering, "This guy clearly never had to fight with wet feet." One night, you sit with a Zen priest who brews you tea that tastes like boiled moss. He asks you what you're seeking. You answer, "No gaps." He nods, says nothing. You both sit for an hour. The idea festers, no gaps. No holes in form, in mind, in stance, in emotion. You want to be like the moon reflected on water, present yet untouchable. Meanwhile, the world keeps shifting. Toyotomi Hideyoshi has died. His child heir is weak. Tokugawa Ieyasu, old and crafty, is gathering power like a thundercloud. The battle for Japan's soul is building, and you're heading straight for it. Because you want to be where the decisions are made, where the blade bites deepest, where you can carve not just enemies, but meaning. You're not a killer, not a hero either. You're a mirror that shows people who they are, right before they fall. And the mirror never lies. You're 21, maybe 22. The road is still under your feet, but now it bends towards something darker. You hear the name again, drifting on the wind like a dare. Yoshioka? Yes, them. Because even though you've already shattered their legacy, broken their heads, ended their school, and walked away from the carnage like a ghost in sandals, somehow there are still whispers, remnants, embers smoldering in the ashes of Kyoto pride, and you, always the moth, flutter straight toward the flame. But let's rewind just a second. Because your duel with the Yoshioka clan wasn't a one-and-done story. It was a slow burn, a revenge tale with chapters and blood-soaked footnotes. After defeating both Seijuro and Denshichiro, their younger brother Yoshioka Matashichiro was still alive. A child. The last heir. The clan, desperate to salvage their honor, did something both predictable and foolish. They used him as bait. They planned a third and final duel. But it wasn't a duel, it was an ambush. Historians still argue whether the boy was even supposed to fight, or just sit nearby while 70 men turned you into a poetic corpse. The meeting place, Achijo-ji Temple. Quiet, forested, shadowed by tall pines. Perfect for betrayal. They expected you to show up like a typical samurai, at the exact hour, in the exact place, all proper and punctual. But you are Musashi, which means you are none of those things. You arrive early, still dark out, dew clinging to the grass like sleep in the corners of your eyes. You scout the grove, count the hidden swords in the trees, the rustle of cloth behind the stones, the glint of blades waiting to strike. You don't panic. Instead, you vanish into the trees like smoke. Then you attack. From the shadows, with a scream that's half wind, half rage, you shatter skulls with a wooden sword like they're porcelain teacups. You don't duel, you dismantle. One by one, men fall. Some never even see you, just the blur before it ends. You find Matoshichiro last. The boy is terrified. He sees the truth too late, that he was never a warrior, just a pawn on a blood-stained board. You strike. The Yoshioka name dies with him, and then silence. The pines sway gently. Your heartbeat returns to something almost human. You're not proud. You're not sad. You're something else. Something empty. You walk away, feet crunching over pine needles and corpses. You don't look back. You never do. Back on the road, the world feels quieter. Not in a peaceful way. In a watching way. Because now everyone knows you. Your name is inked in the minds of every sword student from Kyoto to Nagasaki. Samurai discuss you in whispers over sake. Children carve your name into bamboo and challenge each other to fight like Musashi. Some say you're unbeatable. Others say you're unhinged. But either way, you're undeniable. And yet, you're still not satisfied. Because dueling fools isn't mastery, it's noise. And you're starting to crave silence, the kind that only comes from total control. So you retreat. Not from danger, from people. You begin your habit of disappearing. No farewell, no trail, just gone. You sleep in caves now, let your hair grow wild. Wash your blades in waterfalls. You draw birds. Sketch demons. Stare into the sun too long and claim you saw something moving inside it. You're not becoming crazy. You're becoming clear. There's a story from this time. One of the strange ones, the fringe tales historians love to roll their eyes at. You're said to have fought a group of Tengu, mythical goblin creatures with long noses and magic weapons, in the mountains of Kumano. Most likely it was a group of elite swordmasters testing you in secret. Or maybe it was just a fever dream, some wild hallucination from fasting and too much river water. But in your version, the story is simple. You won. You always do. Still, not all your duels are mythic. Some are practical, educational even. You start challenging the heads of major schools, not to kill, but to test, to learn. Sometimes you win in one stroke. Sometimes you walk away mid-fight mumbling, not worth it. You're studying styles now like a thief picking locks, one kata at a time. You even duel a man known only as the Demon of the Spear and defeat him with a length of bamboo. Because of course you do. But here's the strange twist. The more you win, the less you fight. You start declining challenges. Not out of fear, but boredom. The opponents blur together. Their patterns are predictable. Their feet move like drum beats you've already memorized. So instead you start teaching, not formally, never in a dojo. But here and there to wanderers who show promise. You explain stance with metaphors. You tell a student to stand like a tree leaning into a storm. And when they ask what that means, you walk away. You're a nightmare of a teacher, but somehow they learn. And then there's the horse story. One day, in some nameless town, a pompous noble mocks you in public. Says your sword is too crude. Says real warriors ride horses, wear silk, and don't look like they've been dragged out of a well. You don't answer. You just wait. That night, you sneak into his stable and paint a full-body ink portrait of him on his prized horse. On the actual horse. The man rides it into the square the next morning, unaware. The crowd erupts. His ego crumbles. You're already a mile out of town, grinning like a bandit. Petty? Maybe. But come on, it was art. Despite the jokes, you're growing more inward, more precise. Every movement from slicing fish to trimming brush becomes part of your rhythm, your style. You're not just a swordsman anymore, you're a sculptor, carving yourself. And the blade? It's still your chisel. Smoke curls up from a distant cooking fire as you press your back to a cedar trunk, chewing on a too-dry rice ball and listening. Kyoto again. The capital, the coiled serpent. All silk, incense, and quiet traps. It hasn't changed much, but you have. You're not here to fight. Well, not only. You're here because, like it or not, your name has become currency. Lords want you at their court. Poets want to sketch your profile. Merchants want to say they met you, then overcharge some drunk samurai who falls for it. You move through Kyoto like a rumor. Quiet, unpredictable, vaguely dangerous. And, of course, trouble finds you anyway. You're sitting in a sake house, chewing on grilled eel, when a finely dressed young noble approaches. He's maybe 17, has the skin of someone who's never missed a meal, and the grin of someone who thinks you're just a dirty ronin with good PR. He bows, too low, too rehearsed, then he challenges you. It's not just him, it's his dojo. They want to test the strength of the wild one, and, as they put it, which is noble speak for we think you're a fluke. You sigh, loudly. Then you agree. Not because you're angry. You just don't want the eel to go to waste, and this kid clearly won't stop until he gets his ego adjusted. The duel takes place at a tea house garden. Ivy creeps along the walls, and the koi pond is unnervingly serene for what's about to happen. You win in a single strike. The boy never even sees it coming. He collapses into a flower bed, ruins the chrysanthemums. Tragic. You don't even take a bow, just walk off muttering something about poor footwork. This becomes a pattern. You enter a town, someone recognizes you. There's a challenge, a duel. Then a sigh. Then another man lying on his back staring at the sky, wondering what just happened. And somehow, that doesn't stop people from trying again. You become a sort of gravity well, sucking in prideful swordsmen one by one. But it's not all blood and ego. Sometimes there's beauty. You meet courtesans who smell like plum wine and powdered dreams. They sing songs you don't know and hold your hand like it's something breakable. You never stay long, just a night. Sometimes two. Long enough to learn a name. Short enough to forget it later. One, a woman with calloused fingers and eyes like rain, tells you you're half warrior, half shadow. You leave her a drawing of a crow perched on a katana. She smiles. Doesn't say goodbye. The city pulses with contradictions. Bright shrines and dirty alleyways. Drunken monks and poetic pickpockets. You see it all, sleep nowhere twice, and draw everything. People don't expect that from you. They expect broken noses and battle scars, not charcoal sketches of a cat curled around a lantern. But your hands crave that too. Even the ink smells like home now. Kyoto is where you cross paths with other ronin, some just as lost, some worse. They gather in groups, drink cheap sake, share scars and bad jokes. You, of course, never join them, but sometimes you sit nearby. Listen. Laugh, even. Just enough to remember you're still human. Then one evening, it all gets quiet. Too quiet. You feel it before you hear it. War is coming. The country is reaching its boiling point. Toyotomi's legacy is fraying. Tokugawa's ambition is tightening like a noose. Every province whispers the same word. Sekigahara. You're not invited. No one is offering you banners or gold or glory. But that's fine. Because you don't fight other people's wars unless the reason is yours. Still, you go. Not to join, but to watch. You move like a ghost through war camps, listening. Observing, counting flags. Studying formations. On the day of the battle, you don't stand with the East or the West. You climb a nearby ridge and watch history unfold. Over 160,000 warriors clash. Arrows darken the sky. Cannons roar like gods with indigestion. Horsemen scream. The ground turns red. And you? You sit cross-legged with a rice cake and sketch it. Because this isn't your war. It's your lesson. You see how generals fail, how pride destroys strategy, how weather wins battles more than steel. You watch allies turn traitor. Watch Tokugawa's forces sweep through like a storm that's been waiting its whole life to arrive. And when it's over, when the crows come down and the last screams fade into wind, you walk away. No glory, no wounds. Just a head full of ideas. You're starting to think that true strength isn't in the kill, it's in the clarity. And while the rest of Japan rebuilds under Tokugawa's new shogunate, you slip away once more, invisible in plain sight. Back into the mountains, back into the ink, back into the rhythm of practice and peace. You don't know it yet, but you've entered a new phase. The part where you stop becoming a legend and start becoming something even rarer. A style. The country is healing, supposedly. Tokugawa Ieyasu has taken the reins, wrangled the chaos, and slapped a polite smile. On feudal Japan. No more clan feuds in the open. No more full-scale wars, just quiet ones in politics, poetry, and backroom tea ceremonies. But you? You don't do quiet. Not unless you're swinging a sword through it. After the smoke of Sekigahara fades, you feel like a wolf left out of the hunt. Not because you missed the battle, but because you've seen something deeper in it. A pattern? A weakness. You begin to think about rhythm, not in music, but in motion. The beat of footsteps, the lilt of hesitation before a strike, the heartbeat in your fingers before they grip the hilt. It's all rhythm. The kind only someone who didn't fight in Sekigahara would notice. Because when you're not knee-deep in corpses, you actually have time to see the world move. That's when your style starts taking shape. Niten Ichiryu. 2 swords, 1 soul. That's your thing now. A long blade in the right hand, a short blade in the left. Not as backup, but in unison. Like lungs breathing together. Other schools hate it. Some call it unrefined, even heretical. They say it breaks the harmony of single-blade forms. You shrug, then demonstrate. Loudly, in public. With results that tend to make people rethink their school loyalties. One dojo even tries to ban you from sparring their students. You spar them anyway. They close down the next month. Coincidence? You start drawing again, more seriously now. Diagrams, movements, you sketch stances with lines like water and ink that smells like burning pine. And you keep dueling, but differently. Less to win, more to test. You challenge teachers now, heads of schools. Not to destroy them, well, not always, but to sharpen your own edge. Some welcome the fight, others resent it. There's a man in Hoki province, Terao Magonojo. Clean style, precise footwork, eyes like still ponds. You duel for hours, neither of you giving ground. At the end he bows and asks to become your student. You tell him, only if you never ask for compliments. He laughs, follows you anyway. Then there's Muso Gonosuke. He's good, very good. A master of the bow staff, tall and confident. He challenges you. You accept. The duel is short. Too short. You beat him with ease. Some say you knock him out cold with a single parry. But the story doesn't end there. Gonosuke disappears into the mountains for months. Trains. Rebuilds his style. Comes back with a new weapon. The jo, shorter than a staff, longer than a sword. Designed, some whisper, specifically to counter you. The rematch? No one knows. That's the thing. Historians still argue whether you ever fought again. Some claim he beat you. Others say he lost twice. One even suggests you let him win, just to see if his technique had truly evolved. You, of course, never clear it up, because why ruin a good legend? You're not chasing victory anymore. You're chasing depth. The kind found at 3 in the morning on a hilltop when you're blindfolded, spinning both blades through mist, listening for how your own breath bounces off the fog. You stop looking like a samurai. No flashy armor, no headbands. Just robes that are half travel-stained, half ink-splattered. Your hair is a mess. Your sandals are tired. You look like a teacher who hasn't slept in a week. Or a madman. Or both. And people still challenge you. There's one duel near a riverbank, wind curling through reeds. Your opponent tries to intimidate you with polished armor and 20 minutes of poetic insults. You beat him mid-verse, he falls into the river, doesn't get back up. You fish his hat out of the current and wear it for the rest of the day. You're not heartless, just honest. And that honesty turns heads. Even the shogunate starts to notice. That's when the letters come. From lords, from scholars, from old men who want to spar one last time before their knees give out. You respond to some, burn others. Depends on your mood. Then one message stands out. An invitation. Formal, gold-stamped. From a man named Honda Tadatoki, son-in-law to the shogun himself. He wants you to come to his fief in Himeji, not to duel, to stay, to teach. You're not used to being asked nicely. So you go. The castle is magnificent, built like it's daring the sky to fall on it. You walk its halls barefoot, half out of reverence, half because your sandals finally gave up somewhere on the way. You're introduced with ceremony, shown to a guest room with sliding doors and a garden view. The servants bow too much, the floor's too clean, but something about it feels possible. For the first time you think, maybe you can root somewhere. Maybe this is the place you leave behind footprints that don't fade with the rain. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready to be more than a blade. You're ready to be a book. You wake before the sun. Again, your room is silent except for the soft creak of wood and the rustle of bamboo leaves beyond the sliding door. You rise with a rhythm now, no roosters needed. Your body is a metronome of discipline. The sword never sleeps, even when you do. You stretch. Slowly. Each movement deliberate. There's no armor to strap on, no war drums in the distance. Just a brush, ink, and 2 swords resting like loyal dogs beside your bedding. This is Himeji, a castle town thick with samurai pride and noble expectations. You've accepted Lord Tadatoki's invitation, not as a vassal, not as a killer, but as a teacher. It's strange, there's no battlefield, no challenge, no lurking duel, just students. Eager ones, nervous ones, arrogant ones, all wanting the same thing, to be like you. Good luck with that. You start small, no big announcements, just walking the grounds, correcting posture, sparring in short bursts, correcting form with single words, softer, lower, again. You refuse to build a dojo. Walls make students soft, you mutter. Instead, you train under trees, in gardens, in courtyards slick with morning dew. Your classroom is the wind. Your chalkboard is the dirt. Some samurai scoff. This isn't how it's done, they say. You let them spar each other while you casually dismantle a branch with 2 swords and a bored expression. Soon they start copying you. You're not cruel, but you don't coddle. One student asks when they'll get to dual wield like you. You hand them a broom and a wash tub. Clean the koi pond without falling in. They do. Barely. Lesson learned. Balance comes before bravado. Then there's the scroll. You begin compiling your teachings, not for them, not even for your students, but for yourself. It's not a manual, not exactly, it's a mirror. A place to press your thoughts before they dissolve into sword smoke. You title it Heiho Sanjugo Kajo, 35 Instructions on Strategy. It's spare, clear, a bit brutal. Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. When the way is known broadly, you see it in all things. And, of course, respect Buddha and the gods, but do not rely on them. Your words ripple through the castle like cold water. Even the Lord reads them, slowly, twice. One day, you're summoned, not for punishment, for conversation. You sit across from Lord Tadatoki in a quiet study lined with scrolls and candlelight. He looks at you like a puzzle he's not sure he wants to solve. "You don't seem like the man I was warned about," he says. You shrug. "People fear silence. They fill it with stories." He nods, offers you tea. You decline. Too bitter. You talk about war, about peace, about the illusion of both. He listens carefully, asks questions, real ones. You leave the room not as a guest, but as someone heard. And then you do something you haven't done in years. You stay. Weeks turn into months. The students get better. One even lands a strike on you. Not a deep one, but enough to surprise you. You reward him with silence and a half smile. Another sketches you during practice. You see it. He's captured your posture perfectly, but added wings to your back. You raise an eyebrow. He stammers. You keep the drawing. In the evenings, you write. More scrolls, more thoughts. You start comparing sword techniques to brush strokes, movements to poetry. Every action a verse, every breath a line. One afternoon, a traveling monk visits and watches you teach. When it's over, he bows and says, "You've made peace with the sword." You shake your head. The sword doesn't need peace. The man holding it does. You don't realize it yet, but your time in Himeji marks a shift. You're no longer just a warrior. You're becoming a philosopher, but not the kind who sits in robes debating abstract truths. You're the kind who sharpens wisdom like a blade. One evening, while sketching a sparrow on rice paper, a servant brings word. Another invitation. From Lord Ogasawara, a high-ranking official and a bit of a control freak. He's heard of your time in Himeji, wants you to demonstrate your techniques, publicly. You say yes, not for fame, not for politics, for clarity. You travel again. Back on the road, your sandals flapping, the sword bouncing softly against your hip. The trees blur past like memories. You feel the old rhythm return. The demonstration is held in a grand hall. Polished floors, high ceilings, important people watching from the shadows. You begin with basic footwork, then show how to turn defense into offense. Then, 2 swords. Gasps. You move like ink across parchment. Every cut, every step, precise but loose, like water deciding its board of gravity. When you finish, the silence is heavy. A good silence. Someone asks, "What do you call this style?" You pause, smile slightly. "I don't. It calls me." You bow and walk off, already forgetting half their names. You're not here to impress. You're here to remember who you are, what the blade taught you, and why you must never stop learning. The beach glows silver in the dawn. Waves creep in slow, lazy lines. Gulls call overhead, echoing over stone and tide. You're standing, barefoot in the sand, bakken in hand, the sun rising behind you like a blade drawn from silk. Opposite you, Sasaki Kojiro. He's tall, graceful, immaculate, a silk-wrapped contrast to your sunburned, travel-worn presence. He carries a blade so long it's nicknamed the drying pole, a nod to its reach and the sheer arrogance of wielding something that oversized. He's everything you're not. Fashionable, charming, refined, deadly, and he hates you. This is your most famous duel, the one that gets turned into paintings, plays, and anime centuries after you're gone. But here, on this sleepy stretch of Gonru Island, it's just 2 men and the sea. Let's rewind. Word of Sasaki Kojiro reaches you long before this day. His reputation slices through provinces like wind through pine. He's the founder of the Ganru school, master of the Tsubame Gaishi, a technique inspired by the tail flick of a swallow. Fast, graceful, deadly. You're in your late 20s now, maybe early 30s. Time's gone slippery. You're still wandering, still refining Niiten Ichiryu, your two-sword method, still sleeping under trees and startling nobles with your existence. When you hear Kojiro's name, something tightens inside you. Not fear, not jealousy, fascination. Finally, a worthy reflection. You accept the duel, but not impulsively. You plan it. You engineer it. There's a ship that takes you to Ganryu Island. You arrive late, on purpose. Let him stew. Let him boil in his ego. You show up with a carved wooden oar, not a proper sword. That part becomes legend. Maybe it's true. Maybe not. But it fits. A blade? Too expected. A boat oar? That's Musashi. Kojiro's already waiting, robe fluttering in the breeze, anger coiled in every tendon. He draws first, the drying pole flashing like a lightning bolt. You don't flinch, because you've seen this fight in your mind 1,000 times already. You've rehearsed his patterns in the curve of tree branches, the rhythm of rainfall, the flick of birds mid-flight. The moment he steps, you move. One strike. He falls. Silence. The gulls keep circling. The tide doesn't care. You stand there, heart steady, sweat cooling. You don't gloat. Don't offer a speech. Just bow and walk back to the boat. That duel marks a turning point. Not just in history, but in you. You're no longer simply a masterless swordsman. You're a standard, a living legend. Your name walks ahead of you into villages now. Some people light incense for you like a visiting god. Others hide their sons. But something changes inside you, too. You feel it after the duel. This hollow hum behind your ribs, not grief, not triumph, just echo. Because you know what no one else does. That duel wasn't a climax. It was a transition. You've reached the edge of something. You retreat again, this time deeper, to caves, cliffs, places where the wind whistles with old names. You stop speaking for days at a time. Let your mind melt into ink. You draw more. Paint dragons with eyes like yours. Sketch demons that resemble former opponents. Create landscapes from memory, except the rivers are always running uphill. Sometimes you just sit. Watch a beetle roll a pebble for an hour. Breathe in. Breathe out. You start seeing the sword in everything. How a branch falls, how a shadow curves. You begin to believe that everything is a duel. Not always violent, but always about movement, presence, timing. One story from this period. A challenge from a student of a rival school. Young, nervous, but earnest. He begs for a match. You sigh, agree, and stand facing him. Before he can strike, you drop your swords, you raise one hand, and you look at him. Just one look. Heavy. Precise. Like a blade drawn with the eyes. He freezes. Then bows, then leaves. No fight needed. You wonder later if you just invented psychic swordsmanship? Meanwhile, Japan continues spinning. The Tokugawa shogunate tightens its grip. Peace becomes the new weapon. Controlled, expected, brutal in its own way. And in this peace, you find strange comfort. You're no longer needed in the way you once were. The age of duels is fading. But you? You're becoming something rarer than a warrior. You're becoming an idea. You revisit old places. Himeji, Kyoto, Kumamoto. Students greet you with reverence. Some cry. Others hand you letters they've carried for months hoping they'd find you. You read every one. Answer none. But you keep them. One morning you wake in a field, dew clinging to your eyebrows, and realize you haven't drawn your blade in weeks, and you're not sure you miss it. Because now the fight is in the page. And the paper cuts deeper than steel ever could. The cave is cool and damp, carved into the side of Mount Iwato like a sleeping mouth. You light a candle. Just one. Its flame dances on the stone walls, casting long, wobbling shadows that look almost like old enemies bowing in the dark. You're somewhere in your 40s now, maybe older. You've stopped counting years the same way most people count rice. This cave? It's yours now. No banners, no servants, no ceremony. Just stone, silence, and the occasional curious lizard who probably wonders what you're scribbling. Because yes, you're writing again, but not for students, not for lords, for you. You came here to disappear, not because you're hiding, because you're distilling. After all the duels, the travels, the fame, you realize what you've truly been chasing isn't victory, it's understanding. And the cave? It's the perfect place to face your last greatest opponent, yourself. Let's be clear, this isn't retirement. You still train, every morning, every night. You swing the balkan so many times it becomes a blur in the lantern light. You still do breath work, still practice footwork on uneven stone until your knees scream. But there's less violence in your movements now. More precision. You're sharpening your mind the way you once sharpened blades. In the mornings, you meditate, sometimes for hours. You watch your thoughts rise and fall like smoke. Some about strategy, some about koi fish, some about what happens after death. You let them all pass. Historians still argue whether this was your spiritual phase or your cranky old man phase. Maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe being alone with your thoughts in a mountain cave just makes you a little weird. And maybe weird is exactly what you need. During this period, you start sketching what some now call phantom duels. You draw imaginary opponents, dozens of them, in strange stances, wearing armor from other centuries. You diagram their movements, invent their footwork, and then respond to it. On paper, in practice, even in dreams. One night, you supposedly wake mid-sleep and draw a duel scene on the cave wall using charcoal in your fingers. In it, you're fighting a man with no eyes and 100 arms. You call him the Distraction. When a monk visits weeks later and asks who won, you just smile and say, "Still deciding." You also start experimenting with art again, but it's different now. You paint dragons with broken wings, birds flying underwater, a lone pine tree growing sideways through a rock. Your brush becomes an extension of your breath. Slow, intentional. Sometimes you don't paint what's there, but what's missing. One of your pieces, a heron standing perfectly still while the storm swirls around it, becomes famous centuries later. People hang it in boardrooms, tattoo it on their backs. Back then, it just hangs by your bedroll, half-finished, catching dust. Visitors come and go, some students, some admirers, some idiots looking to test the master. They all leave the same way, quieter. You teach less with your hands now, more with your presence. One lesson is just you and a student sitting silently in the dark, listening to raindrops hit the cave mouth. After an hour, the student says, "I understand." You nod. Whether he does or not? Who knows? But he walks taller. Occasionally you descend from the cave to town, just for supplies, or sunlight. People recognize you. Of course they do. You're a living ghost, a sword wrapped in skin. Old women boo, children peek from behind door frames, men glance at your hands, then quickly look away. One time, a girl offers you a rice ball wrapped in bamboo leaf. You accept. It's sweet, lumpy, and probably the best thing you've tasted in weeks. You never forget her face. You return to the cave, rice ball in your gut, warmth in your chest, and you write. This is the period when the Book of Five Rings begins to take form. Not the final version, not yet, but its bones. You split it into 5 scrolls: earth, water, fire, wind, and void. Each one a layer, a truth, a technique, a challenge. You write things like perception is strong and sight is weak. In strategy, it is important to see distant things as if they were close, and to take a distanced view of close things. You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain. These aren't just tips for swordplay, they're blueprints for life. They don't just teach how to win, they teach how to be. Sometimes you pause mid-sentence and stare out into the mist, thinking about all the duels that didn't need to happen, about the ones that did. You wonder what kind of man Sasaki Kojiro would have become if he hadn't faced you that day. You wonder what kind of man you would have become if he'd won. Then you dip your brush again and keep writing. The cave becomes a kind of temple. Not to gods, but to focus. You cook simple meals. Brew bitter tea. Sit with your legs crossed and your back straight for so long that your spine starts to hum. At night, you sleep on stone with your hand on the hilt of your wakizashi, not out of fear, but habit, and in your dreams, you still duel. But now the opponent has your face. Ink stains your sleeves again. You didn't notice until the candlelight caught it. Black smudges blooming across the linen like bruises. You don't mind. It's the look now. Less warrior. More monk who doesn't pay taxes. Because while the world still calls you samurai, ronin, duelist, the truth is you're evolving. You've gone from steel to scroll, from battlefield to brushstroke, and it's not weakness, it's alchemy. You've traded blood for lines, wounds for metaphors, and your enemies? Mostly silence, stiffness, and the occasional bird who insists on pooping on your freshly inked calligraphy. Art becomes your sparring partner now. You sketch obsessively. Not just duels or demons anymore, but quiet things. A crooked bridge. A cat stretching. A moth pressed against a paper lantern, like it's whispering secrets to the light. You paint with the same rhythm you once fought with. Fast, purposeful strokes followed by long pauses, as if waiting for the canvas to flinch. One scroll shows a mountain warrior leaning into a blizzard, expression calm as if daring the storm to blink first. You call it victory is posture. Someone else later calls it a masterpiece. You just shrug and hang it sideways, but don't think you've gone soft. There's still iron in your spine. You still train daily, though now your audience is a family of squirrels and a few confused birds. You move through your sword forms with the slow, meditative grace of someone who's made peace with pain. There's no audience, no students clapping, no duel to prepare for. Just you, and the rhythm, and the faint rustle of pine needles overhead. Still, letters arrive. Invitations, challenges, fan mail, the occasional poorly written haiku from someone who thinks flattery will earn them a training session. Most go unanswered. But a few, you reply to, briefly. A line or two. Maybe a sketch tucked into the parchment. A sleeping fox, a falling leaf, a cracked bowl. Some get framed. One ends up in a Kyoto poetry exhibition decades after you're gone. They call it Musashi's final advice. It's just a picture of a rock. You also start writing about writing, because let's be honest, most samurai don't have the patience for philosophy. They want rules, lists, diagrams, so you give them some, but with conditions. Strike when the enemy expects defense, you write. See not the opponent's blade, but the space where they will be. Do not forget the smell of ink, even in the heat of battle. One student writes back confused. What does ink have to do with swordsmanship? You send him a blank scroll and tell him, figure it out. The Book of Five Rings continues to grow. It's not just a martial manual, it's a mirror. You explore timing in fire, flexibility in water, foundation in earth, tradition in wind. And then there's void. The strangest one, the quietest, the one people argue about for centuries. In it you speak of nothingness, of moving without thought, acting without ego, knowing without knowing. Historians still debate whether you were speaking in riddles or having a stroke, but those who understand, they really understand. Now let's talk about the insults, because yes, you do throw shade, mostly at other schools. In Wind, you call out popular styles for being too rigid, too flashy, or better suited for dance than for death. Ouch. You mention no names, but anyone who's been in a dojo knows who you're dragging. And some of them write back. Angrily. You don't respond. You're too busy meditating next to a koi pond and feeding a turtle you've named Regret. One afternoon, a student asks you, why do you criticize other styles? You respond, if they were worth defending, they wouldn't be so easy to offend. Mike, drop. But then you add softly, there's no perfect path. Just better questions. Because for all your sharpness, there's softness growing in you now. The cave isn't just a hiding place, it's a chrysalis. Another visitor arrives, an old monk, nearly blind, carries a staff that whistles when it moves. He doesn't challenge you, doesn't even ask your name. He just sits beside you watching the light shift on the cave walls. After an hour, he says, "You've stopped fighting." You shake your head. "I fight differently now." He nods. "Good. The world is tired of blood." Then he leaves without another word. You think about that for a long time. More time passes. The seasons forget your name. The scroll grows longer. Your ink runs lower. And in between pages, you begin crafting a different kind of legacy. Not through victory, but through clarity. You're no longer sharpening swords, you're sharpening minds. The cave has become something sacred now. Not a retreat, but a forge. Every idea tested, every belief questioned. Every truth burned down to what still glows in the ash. You used to think mastery meant winning every duel. Now you think it means walking away from one, and still knowing who you are. And maybe being okay with not knowing at all. The floor creaks under your heel as you step inside the daimyo's hall. You're older now, not frail, never that. Just quieter. More like a mountain that stopped erupting and started listening to the wind. The beard's grown long. Your posture's still razor straight, but your eyes? Those are ancient rivers now. Deep, unrushed. You've been summoned. Again. But this time, you said yes. The man waiting for you is Lord Hosokawa Tadatoshi, a powerful daimyo, cousin to the shogun himself. His court is filled with polished sandals, tea-scented corridors, and people who talk without ever saying anything. You bow out of habit, not deference. He greets you with respect, genuine, rare, and then he makes his offer. "Stay," he says. "Live here, teach here, write here, not as a vassal, as an honored guest." You say nothing for a moment. Just listen to the paper walls breathing in the breeze. Then, with a slight nod, you accept. Because this time, you feel ready to stop moving. You're given quarters near Kumamoto Castle, a quiet space with gardens that smell like rain and plum blossom, and a view of mountains that look like sleeping tigers. You settle in like ink into parchment. You still train every morning, still write, but now you also teach, formally, as in, here's a schedule kind of teaching. And the students? They're lucky and terrified. Some are sons of samurai. Others are bored court officials trying to find their center before they start quoting poetry about leaves again. You take them all, but you don't teach them the way they expect. One lesson is just them walking in silence barefoot across cold stones for hours. Another is sitting in front of a candle and watching the flame until they cry. They complain, whisper behind your back. And yet, weeks later, they move differently. Their posture straightens, their steps quiet, their strikes land. Because your lessons aren't instructions, they're interruptions. You don't give answers. You show them what their questions cost. Sometimes the shogun's envoys visit, dressed in robes worth more than your entire cave. They bow, ask for insight, invite you to ceremonies. You attend only once. Everyone stands in perfect lines. Music plays. Poets read stanzas about cranes. You sit in the back and sketch the ceiling. Someone asks your opinion of the event. You say, "The tea was honest." The rest, not so much. They don't invite you again. You're not bothered. In Kumamoto, you begin painting more seriously, not doodles. Scroll-worthy work. One piece, Buddha in the Eye of a Storm, is so striking a visiting general buys it immediately, then loses it in a fire a year later. He says it was the only thing he tried to save. You smile when you hear that. But what you really care about is the dragon. The one you spend weeks perfecting. Brushstroke after brushstroke. Not just scales and teeth, but presence. The dragon doesn't snarl. It stares. Patient, aware, like it's seen your whole life already and is just waiting for you to figure it out. You hang that one in your personal quarters, no one else sees it. And then there's the sculpture. You start carving again. Not weapons, just wood. You sculpt a hawk mid-flight, a monk balancing on one foot, a cracked bowl being repaired with gold, kintsugi, the art of honoring the broken. Someone says, "Why not carve yourself?" You shake your head. I'm still not finished. People still whisper about your past, the duels, the Yoshioka, the beach with Kojiro. They romanticize it all, you let them. Because what they don't realize is, the real battle is right now. Keeping the mind sharp without the thrill of combat. Sitting still. Aging with grace instead of bitterness. That's the duel no one trains for. One night during a light rain, you sit on your porch, sipping weak tea and watching lightning blink in the distance. A student joins you. Young. Serious. Too serious. He asks, "Sensei, do you ever think of death?" You pause. Set the cup down. Listen to the rain a moment. Then say, "Only when I'm not living properly." He doesn't understand, but he will. A poet tries to interview you once. You say no. He asks again. You hand him a brush and tell him to draw the wind. He says, "That's impossible." You nod. Exactly. There's something poetic about being at the center of power and still refusing it. You eat with servants, walk barefoot through gardens, reject gifts that aren't handmade. You do accept one, though. A simple comb carved from cherry wood. You carry it everywhere. Use it once, still keep it. You start to feel it now, time catching up. The body slower, joints louder, memory thinner. But the mind? Sharper than ever. You could probably still win a duel, but now you'd rather win a moment. And that's something even Kojiro never learned. In Kumamoto, your legend becomes tangible. Not just a myth. A man. Seen. Respected. Still impossible to summarize. Because you are not a warrior, not a philosopher, not an artist. You're the space between. And the blade? Now it's just punctuation. The gravel path crunches under your feet as you walk to the courtyard, both hands tucked into your sleeves. It's cold today, the kind of morning where the breath feels heavier in your lungs, like your body's taking its time deciding whether it wants to keep doing this whole alive thing. You're pushing 60 now, your hair's gone to frost, your joints protest like angry villagers, and your eyes, they see everything, even the things that aren't there. Especially those. Because lately, the ghosts are back. Not scary ones. Not clanking chains types. Just soft presences, like forgotten dreams drifting around the edge of your vision. Sometimes you see Sasaki Kojiro standing near the garden wall, arms folded, grinning. Other times it's your father, stern, silent, unimpressed. And occasionally, just occasionally, you see you. Younger, wilder, holding a bakken in one hand and nothing in the other. You don't speak to them. You don't need to. You already know what they'd say. Your days are structured now, even if time feels like fog. You wake before the sun, still. Stretch, meditate, sketch. Train for 15 minutes, not longer. Not because you can't, but because that's enough. Then comes breakfast. Simple rice, pickled vegetables, hot water. The same meal you've had for decades. Sometimes a servant brings it. Sometimes you make it yourself. It all tastes the same, like peace. You still take students, not many. Not often. They don't come to learn to fight anymore. They come to learn to stop fighting. One of them, a boy no older than 16, asks you, "Master, how do I become strong?" You say, "By being soft." He furrows his brow, confused. You add, "Strength is just fear with armor. Learn to move without either." He doesn't get it. But a year later, he bows deeper than anyone else and walks away barefoot, smiling. He gets it now. Your body slows. You notice it. The ink takes longer to dry. Your strokes lose their edge but gain something else, gravity. You stop sketching dragons. You start sketching teacups. One of your final scrolls is a drawing of two blades crossed on the ground beneath a tree. No blood, no battle, just waiting. It's called After. It becomes famous long after you're gone. You draw it on a scrap of rice paper with a cracked brush and forget about it the next day. Visitors still come, not for lessons, for blessings. They want to see the man who never lost, the man who walked through wars like a ghost in sandals. They ask you what it's like to be a legend. You tell them, boring. Then offer them tea. Sometimes you spar, softly, with wooden sticks, with fans, with words. One man tries to provoke you in the street, demanding a duel frothing with pride. You hand him your bakken, then kneel and close your eyes. He's so confused he leaves. You count that as a win. More and more, your sword stays sheathed. Not because it's heavy, but because you don't need it. You once said, "The true path is found in polishing the spirit." People thought it was poetic. You meant it literally. You polish your spirit now like wood grain, slowly, gently, until it glows. The ghost of Seijuro visits one night, you're sure of it. You're standing in the courtyard staring at a lantern when you feel a presence behind you. Not threatening, not vengeful, just there. You say nothing, just nod. The wind shifts and the air feels lighter. Your final students are loyal, quiet, gentle. They help you bathe, cook your meals, turn your sketches into scrolls, sweep the porch where you like to sit at sunset and just watch. Sometimes they think you've fallen asleep. You haven't. You're remembering. Every swing, every duel, every footstep through mud and snow and blood. You remember the taste of your first rice ball after killing a man. You remember the way Sasaki's shadow stretched on the sand just before you struck. You remember a cave and a candle and a book that changed everything. One afternoon you tell a student, "I miss fighting." He looks surprised. You do? You chuckle. Numbered. But it misses me. The duels never really ended. They just moved inside. Every morning, you fight the part of you that still wants to prove something. Every evening, you thank the part of you that no longer needs to. It's a quiet war, but you win it every day. And now, when you close your eyes, it's no longer ghosts you see. It's gardens, brushstrokes, rice bowls, clouds that drift across the sky without purpose, but with presence. And you think, yes, this is enough. This is everything. The candle flickers, not from wind, there is none, but from the faint tremor in your hand as you set it down. You stare at the flame a long time, watching how it dances without hesitation. It moves the way you used to. Your body, though? Not so much. The pain started a few winters ago. A dull ache in the side, then sharper, then constant. You ignored it, obviously. Pain's been an old companion since your teens. But this is different. This is inside. Some say it's neuralgia, others guess cancer. You don't care what it's called, you just know what it means. Time. Your last opponent has stepped onto the field. No challenge letter, no bow, just a presence. Cold, inevitable, strangely polite. You don't panic, you prepare, you withdraw again. Not dramatically. You just start saying no more often. Declining lessons, shortening walks, sleeping longer. One morning you write a message for your students. The sword returns to the scabbard, but the path remains. They don't cry, not where you can see. And then, from your bedroll, with your back pressed to the wall and your ink-stained fingers curled loosely around a brush, you begin writing Dokudo. The way of walking alone. 21 rules. No decoration, no fancy phrasing. Just truth. Stripped down. Brutally clear. Accept everything just the way it is. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Resentment and complaint are appropriate, neither for oneself nor others. Each one a sword strike, clean, precise, irreversible. You write them in one sitting, maybe two. A lifetime poured into a single scroll. You know this won't be the one people frame. Not like the 5 rings, this one isn't for scholars or soldiers. It's for you. Your own final instruction manual. You think about your past, of course. Who wouldn't? But not with regret. just recognition. There was the 13-year-old with a wooden sword and a death wish. There was the wanderer, lean and wild, scraping rice from the bottom of bowls and testing footwork against highway bandits. There was the man who left footprints on the beach beside Sasaki Kojiro and took none back with him, and the one who disappeared into a cave to draw dragons in silence. All of them. You. All of them still here? You also think about the things you never did. You never married, never had children, never owned land, never wore silk without spilling ink on it. But you also never broke, never bent to a lord's whims, never compromised your blade for comfort. That counts. There are days where your body won't move, not even to eat. Students come and go silently like shadows with rice bowls and damp cloths. You no longer speak much, not because you've lost your voice, because there's nothing left to add. Everything you needed to say is already inked. Everything you needed to teach has been passed down. Now, you observe. Even pain has a rhythm. Even dying teaches something. One night, the fever hits hard. You're alone. By choice. You lie there in the dark, breathing through cracked lips, and feel your spirit stretch. Not like it's escaping, but like it's unfolding. The room expands. Time softens. You remember everything. The brush in your hand. The weight of a blade. The exact sound of wind through the pines at Ichijoji Temple. You remember the feel of sand under your feet on Gonryu Island. The first time you drew a heron and got the wing just right. You remember laughter. Maybe yours, maybe someone else's. And then stillness, not absence. Just peace. Your last thought? Possibly this. No gaps. And then nothing. Not because you've vanished, but because you've become everything else. The scroll, the technique, the silence between strikes, the breath before movement, the rhythm in all things. Your body is still, wrapped in white cloth, laid on a simple mat. No gold, no incense, no fanfare. The students do everything themselves, quietly, reverently. No servants, no hired monks. Just those who trained beside you. Those who listened when you barely spoke. Those who knew the weight of your silence. They carry you to the hill at dawn. No drums, no chant. Just footsteps and the soft creak of sandals against the gravel path. Your grave is simple. A standing stone. Unpolished. Unmarked at first. Later, someone will etch your name into it. Then the titles. Then the stories. Eventually, tourists. But on this morning, it's just you and the earth. And the wind. Moving softly like it knows who it's brushing past. The world keeps spinning. Your students return to the castle. Some stay, some wander. A few begin schools of their own. Branches off your tree. They teach with quiet ferocity. They quote you, not the famous lines, but the strange ones. Do not rely on partial feeling. In all things, be indifferent to where you live. Even if you give up your life, preserve your honor. Generals copy those quotes into journals. Poets fold them into verses. One merchant starts printing docto on handmade scrolls. They sell out. No one knows who gave him permission. You would have hated it, or maybe smiled. The cave becomes a shrine. Sort of. People visit, light incense, trace their fingers along the walls, whisper your name like a charm. Some say your ghost still trains there, wooden sword slicing through the fog. Others say you became part of the mountain, that the wind over the ridge has your rhythm, that the silence between falling pine needles is your voice. They might not be wrong. Years pass, then decades, then centuries. Japan modernizes, then industrializes, then digitizes. Swords become relics. Duels become illegal. Philosophers wear suits instead of robes, and still, you remain. In books, scrolls, stone. Your Book of Five Rings is taught in business schools. A CEO in New York builds his career on the Void Scroll. A boxer in Thailand reads your tactics before every match. A girl in Brazil tattoos no gaps on her wrist. They don't know your whole story, but they feel it. That weight, that rhythm. That way of being that doesn't fade with fashion. Then come the games, the movies, the anime. You become a pixelated boss battle, a wise old mentor with glowing eyes, a background character who steals every scene with one glance and one line. Cut from nothing, return to nothing. Viewers go wild. Forums explode. Merch sells out. You've become myth, not a man with sandals and back pain. A concept. A legend sharpened by time and softened by distance. You don't mind. Legends were always your second language. Still, somewhere out there, maybe deep in the forest, maybe high in a temple garden, someone picks up a wooden sword for the first time. They grip it too tight. Their feet are clumsy. Their balance wobbles, but they close their eyes, they breathe, they listen. And for a heartbeat, in the silence between breaths, they feel it. That presence, that rhythm, that strange, calm voice that says, "This is the way of walking alone." The years pass like falling leaves. Software unapologetic, unstoppable. You are no longer flesh and bone, but you remain. Woven into the folds of scrolls, carved into the memory of mountains, hidden between brushstrokes and sword forms. Your name echoes not in halls of glory, but in quiet dojos, half-lit caves, the whispered breath before a strike. You are everywhere, and nowhere. There's a shrine now. Kumamoto. A simple stone pillar among pine trees. Nothing grand. You would have hated grand. There are offerings sometimes. Coins, rice balls, a folded crane or two. One boy leaves a single stick of charcoal and a piece of rice paper with a drawing of a dragon. It's rough, clumsy, but the eyes sharp. You would have smiled. Once a year, someone stands before that pillar and recites from memory. There's nothing outside of yourself that can ever enable you to get better, stronger, richer, quicker, or smarter. Everything is within. Everything exists. Seek nothing outside of yourself. They don't know where they heard it first. Only that it stuck, like flint on steel. Your words have wandered far. The Book of Five Rings is now a philosophy text, a martial arts Bible, a corporate cheat code. You're quoted by CEOs, generals, coaches, tattoo artists. And yet, none of them know the dirt beneath your nails. The sting of cold rice. The feel of a cracked sandal strap digging into your heel after 30 miles of silence. They don't know the ache in your side that never left, or how the ink on your fingers never really washed off. But still, they carry your words. And maybe that's enough. Somewhere in Tokyo, a child watches a cartoon where a swordsman with your name slices falling cherry blossoms midair while reciting Dakudo. They giggle. Try to copy the move with a mop handle. They trip. They try again. And again. You would have approved, because the form doesn't matter. The persistence does. In a high-rise boardroom, a woman reads the fire scroll before presenting to a crowd of skeptical investors. In a judo dojo in Canada, an aging sensei opens each class with a line from Wind. In a jail cell in Chicago, a young man reads your words and weeps quietly, not from sadness, but from recognition. You've become something more than a man. You've become permission to fight, to think, to be. But the truth is, your life wasn't a perfect arc. It was a series of cuts and corrections, mistakes and refinements, failures repurposed into form. A man stumbling through fire, carving clarity from chaos, guided only by rhythm and the belief that there must be more. And that belief, it outlived you. So now, centuries later, as another lonely soul picks up a bakken on a foggy morning and stands facing no one in particular, and moves, and breathes, and remembers, you are there. Not as a ghost, not as a god, but as the rhythm in the wrist, the stillness between steps. The quiet voice inside that says, no gaps, no fear, no need for anything but this. So now, close your eyes. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the last bits of tension melt like mist on warm stone. You've traveled far tonight. You've walked the roads of feudal Japan, held the weight of wooden swords and ink brushes. You've watched enemies fall, students grow, and silence take on new shapes. But now, it's time to rest. You don't need to carry the blade anymore. The lessons are already inside you. The rhythm that guided Musashi, the breath before the swing, the calm at the center of chaos, that rhythm is in you now too. It's in the steady rise and fall of your breath. It's in the quiet between your heartbeats. And if you listen closely, just beneath the hush of the night and the whir of your fan, you might hear the faint tap, tap, tap of a wooden sword tracing the shape of a dragon in the dirt. You're safe now. No more duels, no more roads. Only the peace that comes when nothing more needs to be done. Just the moon, the mist, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing you walked the path. Completely, alone, together. Good night, warrior. Sleep well.